Hello everybody, Mike Westfall here with McDonald Garden Center. Hope everybody is doing well. This is a live webinar on May 4th where we're going to talk about Sweet to Scorching, my garden guru's favorite peppers. So I'm your garden guru, Mike Westfall, and I have been growing peppers for many, many years, and I've got some of my favorites that I want to talk about. And we'll talk about first kind of some basics, so you get a little bit of the basics of how to grow really, really good peppers. And then we'll talk about some of my favorite varieties because I think that's a lot of fun. And we'll wrap it up at the end with some really, really hot, spicy peppers that we'll talk about as well, because I know so many people are interested in that. As with any of our webinars, please feel free to ask questions throughout this webinar. Let us know if you've got any questions. Let us know where you're watching from so we can say hello. And I hope you all enjoy. We'll jump right into it. I'm going to start with ways to grow them, because peppers are so easy to grow, really. When we talk about, I'm going to talk about the basics here. But they're really pretty easy to grow. And you can grow them in so many different locations. So you can grow them in containers, you can grow them in the landscape, you can grow them in the ground, obviously, and you can grow them in raised beds like over there. So, so many different options to grow peppers. Of course, in containers, we want to use a potting soil. We'll talk about this a little bit more as we go along, but different soil types in each of these areas that you might grow. But peppers are versatile. I think that's the most important thing. You can grow them in different conditions. They're not super huge. A tomato cage actually is a good way to kind of stake them and hold them up, or a single stake sometimes is enough to kind of support them. Sometimes you don't even need a stake because they're pretty small. So peppers are very, very easy to grow, and they're a lot of fun, and they add color. So they're great in the landscape, because they can add color to the landscape. And there's just so many different types, from sweet peppers to hot peppers. We're going to talk about all of those. But you can grow them in any of these three ways. They're really, really easy to grow. Now, let's talk about how to plant them and what kind of soil we need. So if we're growing in containers, we always want to use a potting soil. That's kind of what you see over there. A potting soil is going to have, a blend of peat moss, vermiculite, perlite, aged forest product, or compost. So you've got lots and lots of different choices for potting soils out there. Of course, we have a great one, McDonald's natural and organic potting soil. So you've got a lot of options for potting soils. But if we're ever growing in a container, we always want to use a potting soil because it's draining and it's not going to become a muddy mess over time. You can make your own, but I definitely recommend just buying a bag, filling up your container. Typically for a pepper, you want somewhere around 7-gallon to 10-gallon pot. You can go as big as a 15-gallon depending on the pepper. There's a lot of smaller ones that you can get away with in a smaller container, but definitely easy to do in a container. Whether it's terracotta, ceramic, plastic, even our fabric grow bags are a great option. Raised beds, you've got the ability to make your own soil. So that's what's really cool about a raised bed, is that you can make your own soil mixture. And raised beds heat up a little bit faster, which means the soil temperature gets a little bit warmer a little bit quicker. So you can make your own mix. And typically what the heart of your mix is going to be is compost, and peat moss is typically what's going to really fill up your bed. I like to throw a little bit of topsoil in there just for a little bit of extra kind of soil, something to kind of grip into, because too much compost can burn the root system. So that's the benefit of having a raised bed, is you get to kind of control that soil. And if you build a slightly shallow raised bed, that's perfectly fine. You might amend the soil underneath a little bit, but it's really easy to fill up a raised bed. We've got raised bed mixes that are already made that you can put right into a raised bed. Very, very easy way of doing it. Adding some perlite, compost, peat moss, a little bit of topsoil makes a great blend that you can fill up your raised bed with and be very, very successful with. And then, of course, in the ground planting. So we want to keep our soil if we're planting in the ground. We want to make sure that we're still using our native soil. So what I typically recommend for in-ground planting is 1/3 of our native soil, 1/3 compost, and 1/3 perlite. So that's kind of what you're seeing here. Is the perlite is those little white styrofoamy looking balls that you see in potting soil. But you can use that straight up to amend your soil. It's a great way to add aeration, allow airflow into the soil, and allow water to percolate through and get to the root system. So it's a great added thing that you can do, especially because we have a lot of clay in our soil. So if you're in a sandier situation, if you got more of a sandy soil that drains really, really well, then you omit the perlite and you add peat moss instead. So we're going to do peat moss over perlite in that kind of situation. We always want to do compost though. Compost is going to add organic matter that's going to really be really beneficial to the plant and break down over time. So that's how we're going to plant. That's the kind of soil we're going to use. And then what else do they need? Well, here's the biggest tip that I can give you for peppers. You need sunlight. Sunlight is super, super important when it comes to peppers. I can't tell you enough. I've grown peppers in so many different conditions. My first garden was very, very large, and the peppers were probably in the shadier portion of that garden and never really produced. When I moved it to the hottest sun that I had, that's when I was most successful. I've grown them in some shade, I've grown them in a little bit of half and half, and then I've grown them in full sun, and I'm always, always more successful when it comes to growing them in full sun. So that's very, very important. pH is also important. pH, of course, is what, if we get in the right range of a pH for specific plants, then they can use all the nutrients out of the soil naturally, and they can also use it out of your plant foods that you're giving it. And that's over there is plant food. So we'll talk about that next. But pH is really important. For peppers, it's right around a 6.5 to a 7. So you want to be in that range, which is a pretty kind of standard range for a vegetable garden. So no matter what vegetable gardening you're doing, whether it's tomatoes, squash, cucumbers, peppers, all of those different things that you might be doing, okra, they're all probably right in that kind of similar range. Anywhere from a 6 to a 7. Peppers like a little bit more on the neutral side, so 6.5 to 7 is where we want to be. In that range, the peppers can get all the nutrients that they need right out of the soil and out of the plant foods that you're gonna apply. And that's the next part, is plant foods are super important. And so we definitely wanna use Garden Tone throughout the year. And this bag's probably not gonna show up real well in this blue screen background. But this is Biotone Starter. Biotone Starter is what you want to use at the beginning stages of planting. So Biotone Starter is your starter plant food. It's going to be fully loaded with mycorrhizae and beneficial bacteria that live with the plant the entire lifespan. It's going to boom the root system and just make it grow really, really fast and get nice and big. And you have to use this at the time of planting to get the full benefits. So it's a good fertilizer after that. So it's a great plant food after that. It's a nice organic formula, so it's completely safe. And I love organics for my vegetable garden. But Biotone is what I'm going to use at the time of planting. So it's a really, really good option. Get it right to the root system and get that plant going. And then about probably 2 to 3 weeks later, I'm going to come through with Garden Tone. Garden Tone is a well-balanced, it's got calcium. So there's not a whole lot of issues when it comes to peppers. There's not a whole lot of, diseases. There's some diseases and there's some insect issues, but they're pretty easy to control. And most of the varieties these days are pretty diligent about not getting or contracting a lot of those issues. So that's what's so great about peppers. Yeah, I've had deer kind of come through and nip on them, and the rabbits, and sometimes the squirrels will get into the peppers, especially the sweet peppers. But typically you don't have a whole lot of issues with peppers, which is why I love them so much. Especially the hot peppers, the squirrels won't eat those at all. So Garden Tone is what you're going to want to feed throughout the entire season. I like a granular, slow release plant food because it's going to give it the nutrients that it needs over time, whereas a liquid food is going to be a little bit more instant gratification, but it's going to run through the soil a little bit faster. So with a liquid plant food, we're feeding a little bit more often. It's going to be a little bit more reacting, meaning you're going to see it a little bit quicker. But with a granular plant food, whether you're planting in a container, raised bed, or in the ground, is going to help you be very, very successful. And that's why I love Garden Tone. It's an all-purpose one. It's great. It's got all the things you need, and it's got calcium in it, which is great for the blossom end rot, which you see a lot on tomatoes, but peppers can get them too. If you ever get that black spot on the bottom of your fruit as it begins to form, then that is called blossom end rot, and it's a lack of calcium. And Garden Tone's got lots of calcium in it. You can also, of course, buy straight calcium as well. So you've got great options there, but these are kind of my two go-to. Biotone at the beginning, Garden Tone throughout the season. How much are we feeding? We're feeding about every 3 to 4 weeks in a container, about every 5 to 6 weeks in a raised bed or in the ground. So a little bit more frequently in a container because those nutrients are going to work their way through the soil and out that drainage hole. So important to kind of keep feeding your plants. They need nutrients to survive, and they need nutrients to continue to produce that food. So very, very important that we continue to feed our plants. All right, next is another little tip that I absolutely love, which is mulching. I mulch my vegetable garden every year. One, I think it makes it look good, but two, it adds so many benefits. I can't tell you enough about the benefits of mulching. One, it keeps the soil temperature a little bit more consistent. When we have fluctuating temperatures, which in our area, in Hampton Roads, we get a lot of that. Sometimes we have, an 80, 90 degree day, and then all of a sudden we're down into the 70s. And so that soil temperature, keeping it a little bit more consistent, keeps that plant happier. Keeps it warmer when we're in the cooler portion. It keeps it cooler as we get warmer. So it's really, really a good way of kind of keeping that soil temperature a little bit more consistent. It helps retain moisture. So moisture won't get lost as fast when you have mulch. It also keeps the weeds out. We don't want weeds growing up around our plants. That's a great way to bring in disease and insects. So we want to keep our weeds away, so mulch really helps with that. And it adds organic matter over time. Mulch breaks down and it adds organic matter to the soil. Now, if there was ever a downfall of mulching, which is going to be our downfall anyways, because we all live in areas that probably have oaks and maples and pine trees, because that's what we have as our native big trees here, our big shade trees. That's going to make our soil acidic anyways, but all of your mulches pretty much will do the same thing. You've got cedar, cypress, hardwood mulches, and pine straw. And all of those, as they break down, will make your soil slightly more acidic over time. So we just want to always kind of keep an eye on our pH. I forgot to show you the pH meter, but this is a great little tool. This is our pH meter. You saw it in that picture here. So that little pH meter, you can buy one of those. This one's actually a 3-in-1, so it's a pH meter, moisture meter, and a light meter, so it'll tell you how much light you have, which is also pretty important for peppers because I want you to get as much sunlight as possible, 6 to 8 hours at least. So mulching is really, really beneficial. I definitely recommend it. I even mulch my containers nowadays. I'll mulch my raised beds, I'll mulch the garden. It just really, really makes it look good, and it has nothing but benefits. Just got to watch your pH from time to time. All right, watering is the next most important thing. So watering is very, very important, of course, with all vegetable plants. And it's kind of a little bit, I'm not going to say tricky, but it's a little bit of something where you kind of want to constantly kind of check and see how you're doing. You know, you can push your plants. I definitely recommend pushing your plants, getting them in early, as early as you can, watching your soil temperature, watching your nighttime temperatures. Peppers really don't like nighttime temperatures below 50. So we want to kind of watch that. Typically around May 1st is my kind of day to say, okay, go plant your peppers, because we don't typically get temperatures below that. But it's a great time to do that. And watering is super, super important. Early on, you won't have to water as much. You want to water consistently though early. So I typically will say every 2 to 3, so about every 2 to 3 days for the first 2 to 3 weeks. Depending on soil, depending on light, depending on everything. There's so many different variables that go into it. Wind, do we get natural rainfall? What is my soil like? Does it drain really well? Does it hold a lot of moisture? Am I mulching? Those types of things. So watering is very, very important. But the most important thing about watering is using the right tool. And that's why I have a picture of our dram watering wand, and I've got one right here, because it is my all-time favorite tool. And the reason is it forces you to not overhead water. So overhead watering is about the worst thing that you can do for a vegetable garden, where you turn on the sprinkler and it sprays water all over the leaves of the plants. Well, that breeds disease and fungus and mildew and stuff like that. So we don't want to water the leaves of our plants. All plants can take moisture into the leaves, but that's not what they need to survive. They need it around the root system. Keep the root system cool and keep that moisture in the root system to flow nutrients up through. All plants will release moisture through their leaves. So when you water, that's what happens is it comes up, it moves nutrients through the system of the plant, and then through transpiration, it releases moisture into the air. So we got to keep watering, and we want to water the root system. I can't tell you how important that is. And this will save your back a ton of trouble. So basically what this is a 30-inch rain wand, and what that means is it's got this this kind of diffuser on the end, I guess you could say, but it is a great way to kind of break the water. So they call it a breaker. It breaks the water from being a hard stream and makes it nice and soft, so it emulates kind of like a natural rainfall, which means when you water the root system of your plant, you're not going to be washing away anything. I actually will take this and just drop it by the bottom of a plant just like this, and it'll just sit there and water it for a little while, especially as they get older and bigger. But it'll save your back because it gets right down to the ground, gets right to the root system. It's also got an on and off valve, which is really, really nice. Saves a lot of time. So dram watering wand is a must-have for any vegetable gardener, and really for watering anything. Great for hanging baskets, anything. It's an awesome, awesome tool, and it's the only way I water. If you come to our garden center, you'll see them on every single hose here. It's the only way we water. And so if you see the pros doing it, if you see us doing it because we water every single day, then it's probably the right tool to have. So the dram watering wand is the best one out there. So watering is important for peppers, especially as we get warmer. And depending on the variety of pepper that we're growing, we're going to talk about that a little bit more. You know, if you water a little bit less, or you let, some peppers get a little bit drier, especially the spicier ones, they might get a little bit hotter. But your sweet peppers definitely need pretty consistent moisture. We don't want to overwater. We don't want to underwater. We want to find that happy medium where they can do really, really well in. All right, so we're gonna jump right into our peppers. And these are my favorite ones. These are the ones that I've grown over the past few years. I've grown a lot of different ones, but these are the ones that I've been the most successful with. So I wanted to start with, of course, a sweet pepper. I'm gonna kind of work my way up the Scoville rating, and we'll get to the hottest peppers at the end. But sweet peppers are, of course, my all-time favorite. I think everybody loves a sweet pepper, and Better Bell is one of my favorites. There's a lot of different bell peppers out there. Better Bell is probably one of the smaller ones. It's a 4-lobed. It's got about 3.5 to 4 inches big, so it's a good sized pepper. It's not going to be gigantic. We carry the Whoppers, the Big Berthas, things like that. But California Wonder is a little bit bigger. But Better Bell is a good one because it's a bushy plant. It's very, very prolific, and it's got a sweet taste. And with almost most green peppers, it will change to a red color if you let it ripen on the vine. You can ripen them on the windowsill as well. A little bit trickier, a little bit harder, it takes a little bit longer, and by that time, is the fruit still viable? So we want to kind of try and let it ripen on the vine as much as possible, and the best way to do that is let it kind of stay on there, and maturity in sunlight. Sunlight is super, super important when it comes to peppers, especially if you want to get them to turn red. But Better Bell I love because at the green stage, picking them at the green stage, they're still very, very sweet. They're great for stuffing, roasting, putting in salads, great for dips. You can just cut slices and use them in dips. So Better Bell is one of my all-time favorites for a sweet pepper. Very easy to grow, very disease resistant, really, really good option, especially for people that just start off. It's kind of like my Better Boy of the tomato world. Better Bell is a great one. I definitely recommend it. Even if you've grown many, many peppers, this is a great option because you're going to get a very prolific plant. Pepper Carmen. Now this one is great. Whenever you see our Chef Jeff varieties, most of our vegetables are Chef Jeff, you might see this little AAS sign down there. And that's an All-American selection. And that means it was a winner. And I don't remember what year it was. I want to say it was like 2006 maybe that it was a winner, but it has been one of our favorites. Let's see, yeah, 2006. So it's been one of our favorites for a long time. Gets about 6 inches long, so it's a longer pepper. That picture shows a little bit more of a maroon color, but really the picture behind me really kind of does it more justice. It'll turn bright red, but what I love about it is you can grab it right off at the green stage, and it's very, very sweet. It gets the sweetest for sure when it gets to red, but you get tons and tons of peppers on this plant. I think a lot of us think sweet peppers are like bell peppers, and that's all we got. Well, these more Italian type of peppers is what we call these, or even people might call them like a bull's horn shape. But these peppers are super, super prolific and really, really easy to go and high yielding. And what I like about this one is sometimes these Italian peppers tend to have a very thin flesh. But this one's really got a pretty thicker flesh. It's got a medium flesh, so it's great for stir fries, great for salads, dips. Really, really great option if you like a sweet pepper. The next one is going to be the Pepperoncini, and I hope I'm saying that right, but I think that's right. So Pepperoncini is another Italian type of pepper, a little bit smaller, so it's only going to get about 3 to 5 inches long. Most of mine were about 3 to 4 inches long. It kind of starts off in this kind of yellowy, kind of reminds you of a banana pepper, but great for pickling if you like to pickle, but I really love these on sandwiches. So if you ever want to put peppers on sandwiches, this is one of my all-time favorites. So you can see this plant behind me. It's a nice bushy plant. It's not super, super big. They get about, I'd say about 3 feet tall. But really, really sweet taste. They will actually turn red if you let them. I never really got to that stage. I had some kind of molting and changing color there, but I definitely just couldn't stand it. I just had to pick them because there were so many on there, and I just loved them on sandwiches at that green stage. So really, really good. A snacking pepper kind of is what I would call that. Great for salads. It's just a really, really good one. It actually can have a little hint of some heat to it. So as we start to work our way up, you'll start to hear me talk about the heat here a little bit. Not even really on the Scoville rating, but it just has a kind of a subtle heat to it. So it's really, really a good pepper and a great option for the yard or a container. Red Beauty is my next one. If you want the sweetest, the best red pepper, Red Beauty is the one. Red Beauty is very early producing in red, and what that means is it's going to come out green. It's a green pepper, but it matures to its red color probably the fastest of all of your bell peppers. About the same size as the better bell, about 4 to 5 inches, 4-lobed, really nice shape, pretty easy to grow. Vitamin A and C, just super, super rich in vitamin A and C, and just really, really great for shish kebabs. It adds a really cool kind of smoky flavor when you grill it, so I really like to put these on the grill, and it's just a great snack or appetizer. I love bell peppers. My kids eat tons of bell peppers, and this is one of our all-time favorite is the Red Beauty. It's a really, really good one, and it matures faster, and that's what I love about it, is sometimes with like the better bell, I kind of grow for just the green bell pepper. For my Red Beauties, I try and let them stay on there. You can pick them at green. They're still perfectly fine when they're green. They're not quite as sweet, but when they turn red, it's the sweetest thing out there, and there's nothing better than a pepper grown in your own garden, especially a red pepper. So the next one is going to be a little bit as we push the scale here a little bit, so we're going to get into a little bit more heat here. Now this one's not really Scoville rated either, because I'm going to tell you something about this one. I did this one last year. It's really kind of a fun pepper, and I'll kind of try and move out of the way so you can kind of see the pictures behind me. But a nice little compact plant, really, really nice. It gets about 2 feet tall. Produces a ton of these Japanese peppers, Takara Shishito. Really great pepper, sweet, but it almost has a little bit of that jalapeno kind of heat to it. So not super, super high on the Scoville rating, but what's fun about this one is they're almost always sweet early on, and then as the season progresses, they'll start to add some heat. And it really depends on the growing conditions too. This would be the one where I say if you start to let it get a little bit on the drier side, you're going to get more of that heat. I definitely noticed it when we started to get really, really hot last year. And we got up into the 90s, and I wasn't watering it maybe as much as I should have, but I definitely noticed that the heat picked up. And so it's kind of fun because sometimes you'll pick it and it's sweet, and then sometimes you'll pick it and it's got some heat. And it's really, really good sauteed in just a little bit of olive oil, just as a snack or an appetizer or a side dish. It's great in chilies. If you're a big chili fan and you like to cook chilies, it's a really good one. Or adding a little bit of heat or different kind of complex flavor to a stir fry. Takara Shishito is becoming very, very popular. It is a great pepper and one that you should definitely try because it doesn't take up a lot of space, especially if you're growing in containers. This is a great option because it only gets about 2 feet tall. So the next one is going to be Poblano. Now Poblanos, probably aren't as popular as they used to be, but this is where we're going to start our Scoville rating. So Scoville rating, as you're going to see it down that tag, I don't know if you can quite see it, but it's about 1,000 to 1,500 on the Scoville rating. This is a big scale. It goes from 1 to, I think, like 5 million or something. It goes way up there. We don't get quite that high with peppers, and we're going to get really, really hot here. I'll take the time now as we get into the spicy peppers to tell you that I am not a huge spicy pepper fan. I have become a little bit more of one. So I've started to do a little bit more. This was probably the first spicy pepper that I ever grew because it was one of the lowest on the Scoville ratings. And this is what kind of got me into it. And as your taste buds change a little bit and you get a little bit more adventurous if that's who you are, then try some of these. And Poblano would be a great one to try. It's really, really pretty easy to grow. It does get a little bit bigger, so it's about, probably a 3 to 4 foot tall plant. Very, very bushy, but prolific. I mean, and they're nice and big. They're, 3 to 4 inches long and about 1 to 2 inches in diameter. Nice, medium kind of thickness to the flesh. But what I love about them is roasting them. Just on a grill, roasting them, it just adds a little bit of heat, whether you're eating with a steak or a chicken dish or anything. It's just a great little side dish. A lot of people will roast them and then can them and preserve them or even freeze them. It's a great option for stir fries. Really, really great pepper, but I love it because I like to just cut it open, put it on the grill, roast it, and I'm not gonna completely tear apart my mouth. This is very, very mild when it comes to the spicy part. But this was the first one I ever did, got me into spicy peppers, and I'll talk about my next two favorites here. So this one is the jalapeno. Of course, jalapeno is probably, I think it's our #1 pepper now. It is so popular because of salsas. I think so many people use them in salsas. Jalapenos are easy to grow. I think that's the other part of why it's become so popular. When we talk about the Scoville rating, it's about 4,000 to 5,000 on the Scovilles, so still pretty mild to medium heat. Especially getting a little bit spicier, but very easy to grow. It's only on about a 2, maybe 2.5 foot tall plant, so it doesn't get super tall. So it can grow in the landscape. It can grow in a container, in your row plantings, anywhere. It's a great option, and I definitely recommend it because it's just such a heavy producer. Definitely going to get a little bit hotter as we let it get to a red color. So if you can let it get to red, it gets a little bit more intensity into that heat. I like it green, and I think most people do like them green. It adds a little bit of that sweetness to it and a little bit more complexity to the flavor because you get that heat at the end, but you get that nice kind of sweetness, pepper taste right at the beginning. So it's a great one. Of course, you can use jalapenos on so many different things. Salads, you think about it like a Greek salad. You think about all of those different options where you have jalapenos on pizzas. You can pickle them. You can, do so many different things with them. It's just a great option to have because you're going to get heavy production. That's what's so fun about, I think a lot of people think about bell peppers, and they're great, and I definitely say do some like the Better Bell and the Red Beauty, but don't forget your longer peppers and your skinnier peppers. They are heavy producing plants, and jalapeno is by far one of our most populars because of that, and because it's so easy to grow, and you're just gonna get production. It takes a little bit longer for them to get to the red color, but they just keep on producing. And they'll go all the way until frost. Like the Poblano, I forgot to mention that with Poblano. I got Poblano peppers, almost in November. I was still picking Poblanos. So maybe not as many as, in August and September, but definitely was still getting some. And the jalapenos are just like that, just keep on going. So the next one, we're gonna ramp it up another notch. And this is about as hot as I typically get. So the super chili. So the super chili is a great pepper, very heavy producing. Again, these long kind of, skinny peppers. That sometimes will actually be kind of a little bit more upward facing. Sometimes they'll hang down a little bit. A little bit of a bigger plant, gets about, probably 3 to 4 feet tall, but nice and skinny plants. So not super wide. So you can actually plant a little bit more of these in a row. You want to space them about 18 inches apart. Matures pretty quickly at about 75 days. Adds a lot of spice to salads or cooked in dishes, stir fries, but really probably my favorite one for salsas because it's very easy to just chop up a bunch of them, add them to your salsa, and just ramp up that heat. Now this is 40,000 to 50,000 Scovilles, so this is getting up there. So we're getting up to habaneros, I think right around 300 to 500, which is not really where I go. So this is about as hot as I typically get as the super chili. I've tried a couple other ones. Of course, I've grown a bunch just to see, but I've never really been tempted to go any hotter than this. So this is one of my all-time favorites. If you really want to ramp up the heat, then this is the one that I would recommend. Now, what I'm going to talk about next are the very hot ones. Now these are ones that I've never actually eaten. I have grown a couple of them just to kind of grow them and play with it, but I've never eaten them. I'm just, not that kind of spicy. I love the heat, but I don't want to burn my mouth. And these all come with some warnings to them. So I just want to do these because I know a lot of people are super interested in the super spicy varieties. So we're going to start with the ghost pepper. So now we're getting into the millions. So you look at that Scoville rating, it's 1,041,000. So really, super hot. So these come with warnings, all of these do, and the warning is, the grower and the retailer are not responsible for the injury if you handle or eat this plant. So super hot. So let's talk about, the warnings here real quick. Always use gloves when you handle these peppers, no matter whether you're touching the leaves or picking the peppers. I definitely recommend disposable gloves so that even when you're done, you can get rid of those gloves. I still wash my hands afterwards. Just be careful because if you rub your eye or something, or even your forehead on a sweaty day, it'll burn. It can even burn through your hands. So be careful with these, very important. But if you're into super spicy peppers, ghost peppers were kind of the one that kind of started it all. Ghost pepper is very hot, 1 million on the rating, and you can see kind of behind me how scary looking these things can get. And they actually are pretty good when they're green. They get, of course, super, super spicy when they're red, but as they get green and as they kind of look like you could probably eat them, then definitely going to be much lower on the Scoville rating. But if you let them get to that red stage, they get over the 1,000,000 mark. And they are super, super hot. And actually, it's more of kind of like an orangey red. So very pretty, kind of different looking. But when you start to get these crinkly looking, kind of crazy looking things, that's when you know you're getting into some serious business with a very, very hot pepper. They do get a little bit bigger. So these are only going to be, probably about 2 to 3 feet, maybe 3.5 feet tall. But very, very bushy, very prolific. Have your milk nearby when you're eating these peppers, and be careful. The next one, we're getting even more intense. So we're going to go with the Trinidad Scorpion pepper. These are 3 of our hottest peppers: the ghost pepper, the Trinidad Scorpion, and then the next one is the hottest one that we carry. So the Trinidad Scorpion pepper is 2,000,000 on the Scoville rating. And you can see how scary this thing looks behind me. So really, really kind of crazy pepper, very, very hot. About the same kind of as the ghost pepper as far as size goes. These peppers get about 2 to 3 inches. They have a little pendant shape at the bottom, kind of different looking. Use caution as always with these as well. But a very, very spicy pepper, and produces green to almost orange and red when they get fully ripe. You can eat them when they're green still, and of course drops the heat down a little bit. But still, even dropping the heat down on this one just a little bit is very, very is very risky, I will say. So just be very careful with them. But the Trinidad Scorpion pepper, super, super spicy. Over 2,000,000 or 2,000,000 on the Scoville rating. So now the hottest pepper we carry is the Carolina Reaper. So the Carolina Reaper, as you can see right there on the label, is the world's hottest pepper. This just took over the Trinidad Scorpion, 2.2 million on the Scoville rating. So really gets up there, and you can just see kind of how spooky looking this thing is behind me. That really crinkly one. It's got this kind of like weird little tail. You can see the Grim Reaper over there holding that pepper, and it's got this kind of weird, kind of little twisted tail at the bottom. But really, what's kind of cool about this one is actually got some complex flavor to it. So I've heard, I've never tasted one, but people that do eat these will say that it's got, a really kind of complex, like sweet pepper taste at the beginning with a little bit of like cinnamon and chocolate taste to it, but then the heat kicks in, and it is super, super intense. So be extremely careful with these. It is an insanely hot. I think it was crossed between the ghost pepper and a red habanero. So you get kind of like this crazy, crazy heat. Now we skipped a whole bunch of there in the middle. So I just got to the hottest one that I have ever grown, which is the super chili, or that I've ever eaten. So the super chili. But from here you go to habanero, which is like in the 300 to 500,000. On the Scoville rating. You've got a couple more that, tick it up even more, go to 700, 800,000. So we've got a huge range of spicy peppers. So you can kind of keep increasing your Scoville rating over the years to try different things. But if you really want to get to the hottest one ever, this is it. Carolina Reaper. It is crazy, crazy hot. And it is a really, really good one if you're into that very, very spicy pepper. So it's something to be very careful with. As I mentioned, protect your hands, don't wipe your face, wash everything when you're done. Even your pruners, I'll go and say, after you use your pruners to clip out your fruit, even wash off those, because you might go and use it on something else, or you might wipe it with your hand or something. So just be careful when handling these. It is risky, and just know what you're getting into. But if you like spice and you like the hottest thing that you can get out there, then this is it, Carolina Reaper. So that is kind of my list there. We went through all of them, from sweet to scorching. I definitely recommend peppers. I think the most important thing is to give them sunlight. I think that is the one thing that I've learned the most about peppers, is they need the most amount of sun. I have a lot of shade, and so I typically don't have a whole lot of sunny areas. But if I've got to do something that I want to grow, and bell peppers, I can get away with some like cucumbers and even some tomatoes in a slightly shadier section. But I mean, when you need to grow peppers and you want to be very successful with them, get them 8 hours of sunlight at the least. I mean, 6 is okay. You're not going to be super successful, but when you get them out into that full sun area where, it's the south side, sun, where you're going to get all day sun basically, that's really where you're going to have the most success with peppers, and you're going to be eating them all season long, and you're going to love them. Of course, be patient with peppers. They take a little bit of time to form. When we talk about maturity levels, typically somewhere around that 75 to 95 day range, which means you're talking about almost 3 months before you're really getting good crops, but they'll keep on producing all the way into the fall. So here in the Hampton Roads area, if you get them in May, you're typically eating by, let's say, so that's May, June, July. So by August, you're typically getting them, and September is a great month as well. So you really can get 2 really good months of really racking up all the peppers and having a lot of fun with it. And they're very easy. Water the root system, don't water the leaves. Mulch, I think, is super beneficial. Continue to feed them. Try ripening them right on the plant. I think that's the best way to do it. And if you don't, pick them green because they're still really good. So I hope you all enjoy this. I don't think I see any questions, so I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye, everybody.